In the 1800s, England joins global trade. They bring in fine silks and exotic spices from other places. But sadly, they also accidentally bring the zombie sickness. Soon, these terrible monsters are everywhere. Millions of people die and then come back as zombies, desperate for brains. Healthy people start learning dangerous fighting skills from China and Japan. Later, the government builds the Grand Barrier, a huge 100-foot wall around London. Then they add the Royal Canal, a very deep ditch that goes around both the city and its walls. The land between the wall and the ditch is called the in-between. In a big fight known as the Second Battle of Kent, one of the bridges over the canal breaks. Zombies kill everyone in the in-between area, which makes the king go crazy. After the fight, he orders all bridges to be destroyed, except for just one. Soon, rich lords and ladies leave London to live in their own safe, strong houses. One day, Colonel Darcy arrives at a house in Hertfordshire County. He's heard someone there might be bitten. A guard checks his ID at the entrance and takes him down a tunnel. There, a priest checks his whole body to make sure he's not bitten. Finally, he's allowed into the house. Mrs. Featherstone is playing cards with friends. She strongly says no one there is bitten and no zombies have entered her home in years. Darcy pretends he wants to play too. He sits at a table and takes out a small bottle of special flies, called carrion flies. He lets them go in the room, explaining they can find rotten flesh. The flies fly around for only a second before landing on a man. This means he's slowly turning into a zombie. Darcy quickly breaks his glass and stabs the man's face. Then he cuts off his head with his sword. Afterward, Darcy asks if this man might have infected anyone else in the house. Featherstone says no, so Darcy kicks the zombie's head across the room to shock the guests as he leaves. However, Featherstone's daughter refuses to keep lying. She runs upstairs to check on the infected man's niece. But it's too late. The girl has already turned into a zombie and attacked the staff. Now she attacks Featherstone's daughter too. Meanwhile, Mr. Bennet has been training his 5 daughters in every kind of weapon and fighting style. This is so they can defend themselves against zombies. But their mother, Mrs. Bennet, isn't happy about it. She wants them to focus on getting married. When Mrs. Bennet hears about a coming dance, she convinces her husband to let them go, saying it's a needed break. All the sisters are excited about it, except for Elizabeth, who doesn't like social events. They all put on their nicest dresses. But they make sure to hide weapons in them. Later at the party, Bingley is talking with Darcy. He suddenly stops when he sees Jane, falling in love instantly. He asks her to dance, and they have a lot of fun together. Afterward, Bingley tells Darcy he should dance too and asks him to invite Elizabeth. But Darcy says she's just okay and not pretty enough to interest him. Elizabeth hears this and walks away. She then accidentally knocks over a bottle and embarrasses herself in front of everyone. Once outside, Elizabeth starts crying, but is interrupted by Featherstone, who has become a zombie. She can still speak and wants to tell Elizabeth something. However, Darcy shoots her in the head first. Hearing the shot, a group of people come out to check on them. At that moment, another zombie appears. The guards ring a bell to announce an attack. While most guests rush to hide, the Bennet sisters take out their weapons and start fighting. They fight without mercy, defeating every creature with exact sword strikes and strong kicks. Seeing Elizabeth fight makes Darcy start to feel attracted to her. Afterward, all the dead zombie bodies are burned. When the sisters go home, Jane talks non-stop about Bingley. Meanwhile, Elizabeth keeps complaining about Darcy's manners and pride while she trains, which makes her moves and punches much stronger. The next day, Jane gets an invitation to have tea with Bingley. Mrs. Bennet makes her ride a horse instead of the carriage. That way, if it rains, she might be asked to stay the night. On her way there, some dogs run by because a zombie is chasing them. Jane gets ready to shoot, but her horse gets scared and throws her off before running away. Then Jane tries to shoot, but her gun fires the wrong way and hurts her hand. When the zombie finally attacks her, Jane pulls out her knife and fights hand to hand. She quickly cuts off the zombie's hands and slices its legs. Once it falls, she kicks its chest and stomps on its head to kill it. As it starts to rain, Jane sees a zombie mother carrying an infected baby coming for her. The next day, Elizabeth arrives at Bingley's house. It turns out they found Jane sick with the flu, so she stayed the night with a fever. Elizabeth came to see her. However, Darcy is worried Jane might be infected. So while a doctor checks on her, he lets out his special carrion flies. The small bugs don't react to Jane, and Elizabeth easily catches them all. She crushes them in her hand, before giving them back to Darcy with a sharp comment. Afterward, Jane joins Bingley and his guests, but she declines their invitation to play cards, preferring to read. An argument starts about what makes a real woman. Darcy isn't sure if he's impressed or if he dislikes Elizabeth's strong opinions. That night, Elizabeth secretly watches Darcy training outside. The next day, the rest of the Bennet sisters and their mother come to pick up Jane and Elizabeth. Bingley wants them to stay, but Darcy reminds him of the dangers of infection. He and Elizabeth engage in another heated exchange, during which he reveals he knew she watched him train last night. To keep everyone happy, Mrs. Bennet convinces Bingley to have a dance to cheer people up. On their way home, they see that the local orphanage has fallen, and now zombie orphans are wandering in the woods. Sometime later, Mr. Bennet introduces his family to his cousin, Collins. Collins will get the estate when Bennet dies, because women can't inherit. During lunch, Collins tells them that his boss is Lady Catherine. She's an amazing swordswoman who did wonderful things during the zombie war. He also shows interest in Jane. However, Mrs. Bennet immediately turns him down, saying Jane already has Bingley and offers Elizabeth instead. In the afternoon, Collins and the sisters leave to visit their aunt. But they stop on the road when they find a broken carriage with a woman screaming for help. The sisters get their weapons ready. When the woman comes out, they immediately shoot because she's a zombie. Jane finishes her by kicking her down the hill. As the trip continues, Elizabeth struggles with the heavy weaponry, but Collins only puts them back in her arms instead of helping her. Upon reaching their destination, they notice the new soldiers who will protect this area. Elizabeth meets Lieutenant Wickham, and they immediately like each other. Darcy is riding nearby and gets jealous when he sees them, so he leaves without a word. Wickham tells Elizabeth that he and Darcy don't get along because of some family money problems. That night, everyone goes to the dance, and Jane spends time with Bingley. Elizabeth, on his way out, Darcy hears Mrs. Bennet talking about Jane's future with Bingley, and she keeps focusing on his money. Meanwhile, Elizabeth bumps into Bingley, and they hear a noise. When they turn, they see a servant being attacked by a zombie. The two get some axes and follow them downstairs. However, the zombie grabs Bingley and makes him fall. Elizabeth immediately slides down and knocks the zombie down before checking on her friend. But when she looks up, she finds all the zombie orphans hiding down there. She asks them how they got in secretly. A kid says that their new friend showed them the way. At that moment, Darcy arrives and starts fighting the zombies, quickly beating them all with fast sword slashes and the help of a kitchen knife. A zombie even gets pushed into the oven. Then Darcy asks if Bingley was bitten and gets ready to kill him too. But Elizabeth assures him that Bingley just fell. Before he leaves, Elizabeth tells him that he's a great fighter but a bad friend. The next day, Jane gets a letter from Bingley explaining his family is moving back to London, and that he'll start trying to win Darcy's sister instead. During lunch, Collins asks Elizabeth to marry him, but she would have to give up her weapons and not fight zombies anymore. Elizabeth turns him down and rushes outside to release her anger by training. Her mother scolds her for saying no to such an important offer, but her father respects her choice. Elizabeth hugs her dad to thank him, but her mom keeps nagging, so she runs into the woods for peace. In the forest, Elizabeth notices many birds flying above 4 men with top hats. She's then approached by Wickham. When she turns, the 4 men are gone. Wickham says he didn't see anything, before inviting her to a special place. Moments later, they arrive at a church where a priest is giving a sermon. When the crowd turns, Elizabeth is shocked to see they are all zombies. Wickham stops her from grabbing her weapons, and they watch the priest feed them pig brains. It turns out infected people don't fully change into zombies if they don't eat human brains. Wickham thinks this is the key to humans and zombies understanding each other. Elizabeth agrees and points out they should tell the king. However, Wickham explains the war almost made the country bankrupt, so he has no one to go to for help. Sometime later, a friend of Elizabeth's tells her she's engaged to Collins and asks her to come as her companion to meet the in-laws. At Collins's estate, Elizabeth is amused by a picture showing Catherine killing Lucifer. There's also a painting of the 4 horsemen of the zombie apocalypse, who are said to appear when the end is near. Elizabeth realizes they are the men she saw in the woods. Then she finally gets to meet Catherine and her daughter. Elizabeth is shocked to see Darcy is there too and learns he's Catherine's nephew. Soon, Wickham also arrives, because Elizabeth invited him so he could ask for the money he needs for his plan. Catherine thinks the idea of befriending zombies is silly, and that they would never listen to a leader. But Collins points out that the Bible says the Antichrist will lead the undead. Darcy supports Catherine's view and gets angry when Wickham mentions his father, so he makes the guards kick him out. Elizabeth tells Darcy that he's as heartless as the undead. That night, Darcy spends a lot of time training outside to deal with his anger. Elizabeth can't sleep because her friend snores, and goes for a walk in the gardens, where she finds Wickham. He's come to tell her that Darcy made the Bingley family leave by telling them that Jane is only after their money. Wickham also asks Elizabeth to run away together, but she turns him down. Before leaving, Wickham reminds her that the day of judgment is coming. The next day, Darcy tells Elizabeth that he considers her lower class, but he's still attracted to her, so he asks her to marry him. Elizabeth turns him down and calls him out for what he did to Jane and Bingley, only for Darcy to defend his actions. A furious Elizabeth kicks him and throws many objects at him before attacking him with a fire poker. He quickly defends himself, and they end up in a close position on the table. Their argument turns into a full fight, and they hit each other many times before they end up in another awkward position. When Elizabeth says she'll never marry him, Darcy finally leaves, and she ends up having a breakdown. Later, Elizabeth gets a letter from Darcy explaining himself. He says he didn't mean to hurt Jane. He only sent Bingley away to protect him from Mrs. Bennet. He also explains that he had to kill his own father when he became a zombie, but he still gave Wickham the money he promised him. However, Wickham kept coming back for more and got angry because Darcy wouldn't pay. Then Wickham tried to marry Darcy's teenage sister for the money, but Darcy saved her just in time. Lastly, Darcy tells Elizabeth that he respects her feelings for him. So to forget his heartbreak, he's gone to London to fight against the latest zombie attack. He thinks someone is leading the zombies, because the attacks were too organized. Back at the church, the men keep fighting, and Darcy manages to stab his opponent. However, Wickham is fine because he's been undead the whole time, and has controlled his desire for brains thanks to his hate for Darcy. Wickham explains the 4 horsemen have risen from hell, and he's the Antichrist that will lead them. He starts choking Darcy and gets ready to cut off his head, only for Elizabeth to stop him by cutting off his arm and riding over him with her horse. Afterward, the couple rides away on Elizabeth's horse while the zombie horde chases after them. They make it to the bridge, right as the soldiers activate the bombs. The sisters think Elizabeth is getting killed by the explosions. However, when the smoke clears, Elizabeth is crawling on the rubble. She finds Darcy's unconscious body near her, and cries as she kisses him and says she loves him. A few days later, Bingley asks Jane to marry him, and she clearly says yes. Darcy wakes up from his coma and tells Elizabeth he heard her on the bridge. He proposes to her, and she says yes before they kiss. The couples get married together, and Collins leads the ceremony. Everyone is happy until they see Wickham approach with a zombie horde.